On today's Technobabble, steps to building a video ministry.
This is Tech No Babble, your weekly source for church video and graphics news, perspectives, tips, and tricks. And now here's your host, Paul Clifford.
Hi everyone, and welcome again to another episode of Technobabble. I am your host, Paul Allen Clifford, and I'd love for you to join the conversation. So head on over to trinitydigitalmedia.com/contact, and there you can leave a message, or you can notice that I have all my contact information listed. So this is all you need to remember. If you want to get a hold of me, trinitydigitalmedia.com/contact. There you can find my phone number, 1-877-763-3246, 1-877-POD-ECHO. You can also find my email address. Sorry, blank there for a second. Paul@trinitydigitalmedia.com, which makes perfect sense when you think about it. Or my Twitter handle, which is my name, the shortest way you can spell it, minus the last four letters. So it's, I'm Paul Allen Clifford, spelled the four-letter way with no E's. Allen is. So it's PAULALANCLIF is my Twitter handle, Paul Allen Cliff. And you can reach me right there, and I would be greatly appreciative of that. So before we get going, I want to thank those of you who have helped out the show by heading over to patreon.com/PaulAllenCliff. That's patreon.com/PAULALANCLIF. For as little as $1 a month, you can help support the show. But if you wanted to give up one Starbucks drink a month and slide the money my way, there are some additional gifts that I'm willing to offer. So the first one for $5 a month is a copy of one of my books. So if you're interested in those, that's a way to support the show. There are other gifts, so head over to patreon.com/PaulAllenCliff and take a look at those, and you'll see which one is right for you. Remember, it's not a lot of money that I'm offering, that I'm asking, but every little bit helps to defray the cost of this production and all the other ChurchTechCast.com shows. So, let's talk about the steps to building a video ministry. If you're in a smaller church, you might look at larger churches like, say, mine, and have a little jealousy. You know you're not supposed to have jealousy, but you have it nonetheless. And so you might be thinking, they have all this great stuff and all these people, and how did they do that? Well, like they say, Rome wasn't built in a day. And so I thought that I'd go through the steps that we went through to get to the point where we're at now. So, and in fact, step number 7 is something that we're playing with right now, but we're not quite even there on step number 7. So there's still room for growth. So step number 1, sermon and lyric support. Now this is kind of the bare minimum of what you can do and use video in your church. So if you're doing sermon and lyric support, you need some sort of display. If it's a particularly small room, you can maybe get away with a television. But it would have to be like a room that seats 30 or fewer people. Sometimes churches think, oh, well, I'll just get a big 1080p TV for our room that seats 500 people. Nope. No, you won't. That's too small a display. You need something probably 4 times that size, bare minimum. So you need a projector or display, probably a projector. You need a computer, preferably a newer one, but when we started we used a donated computer, and you need presentation software. Now when you're first starting out, you could start out with something like Keynote or the Google Docs presentation software or PowerPoint. Those will be less than ideal. It would really be better if you went with ProPresenter. I'm not going to pull any punches because I've tried a lot, and ProPresenter's the best. It's even what Willow Creek uses. When I talked to Todd Elliott earlier this week, which you can find over at trinitydigitalmedia.com, he's the technical arts director at Willow Creek, and that's what they use. So it's high-end stuff. It's not free, but it's worth every last penny, in my opinion. So you could start with basic presentation software, but worship software is really better. Step 2, pre-produced videos. This is the step where you start making your own videos. So I suggest that you get everything that I've listed already, plus you also need camera, audio, and lighting, plus editing software for your computer. Hopefully you've got a better computer at this point, because you can do some bare minimum presentation on a pretty junky computer, but when it comes to editing you want a better system for that. And when I say camera, audio, and lighting, depending on what you're doing, you might be able to get away without the audio and lighting thing. We started out doing what we called concept videos, which were music videos set to music and we shot the video typically outdoors. So the lighting wasn't as much of an issue. You can use a reflector, a bounce board, very inexpensive stuff. Even a 5-in-1 reflector, which I'd highly recommend. They're very inexpensive, and they work a lot better than the budget solutions. So you can use one of those, and then for audio, if you're doing a music video where you have the music already, you don't need audio. But if you're doing man on the street, word on the street, streeter, depending on what it's called, then you would need audio. But you'd only need a single mic plugged directly into the camera. So you need a camera, preferably one where you can get external audio into it, although you could record with like a Zoom H4n or something like that and then sync it in post-production. But those are kind of the minimums. Stage 3, IMAG. When you're doing IMAG, while it's possible to plug a camera directly into your projector, I would not suggest it, because you have nowhere to go. If something goes wrong, your only solution is to switch the inputs on the projector. I wouldn't suggest going through your worship software if it has that ability, because you're going to get latency. So that's not good either. You're going to see some delay between what happens in real life and what happens on the screen. You want it to be 3 frames or less of latency. And when you run it through a computer, that adds some because of the processing. So you want 2 or more cameras, at least prosumer grade. And the reason for this is so that you can control zoom outboard. Next, you need a switcher, a video switcher that will enable you to switch between your signals and key lyrics and the like over your video signal. You need good tripods. And when I say good tripods, I'm saying at this stage, the bare minimum you should be spending on a tripod is probably $150. In fact, probably the only place local that you'll be able to pick up a good tripod is a camera store, and a dedicated camera store, not a camera store that's like In a grocery store or in a Walmart, no, they probably don't have them. But a dedicated camera store where you can buy a 5D Mark III, for example, and $500 lenses, that's the place to look for good tripods. Otherwise, you can pick them up at B&H, Adorama, even Amazon sells good tripods. So you need good tripods. You also need comms. And by comms, I mean communication systems. Now, when we first started doing IMAG, we had two Canon GL2s. We had two good tripods. We had a MX Pro D. No, we didn't go for the DV version. We had an MX Pro switcher, which at the time cost about $1,000. And we had do-it-yourself comm systems, which I found plans to turn telephones into comms online. Basically, telephones are pretty basic technology. So setting up a closed-circuit telephone system wasn't hard. Even given the fact that while I like electronics, I'm not good at the electronics engineering standpoint, I could figure out how to add a resistor in and how to do some basic filtering to a power supply. So it was pretty straightforward. And you need video monitors. When we started, we used two televisions. They're not going to be color accurate, especially between the two or in reference to the way the colors actually are. But you can get in the ballpark of what you need. So you'll need some monitors for the director, technical director, etc., which we'll talk about people in a second. For that person to take a look at what you've got. So that's the next step is IMAG. Next is live streaming and or broadcast. Once you've got your shots down, once you can deliver good shots over and over again, you've got your team down, everything you need. You need everything that I've already mentioned, plus you need either an encoder appliance, an encoder box, or encoder software and a dedicated computer. Please don't try and use your worship computer for encoding. While it can be done, right now I'm in the 80 to 100% range of using my computer to encode. I can actually look up there. Right above there, yeah, is a CPU usage. So I'm right on the edge of making things not work with my computer. Add worship software to that, and you're just begging for a problem. So try and use a dedicated computer or a streaming appliance for this. And you need a streaming host. Please don't try and put the video directly up on your website and say, hey everyone, just come to our website. You'll regret that really fast. So you need a streaming host like churchstreaming.tv, which is who I use. Worship Channels is another one. Ustream, Livestream. You could use YouTube live streaming, but the problem that we've run into, and I've now talked to two different churches that have had their streams cut off during church because of copyrighted music that they were using, even though they had a license for it. So that's a bit of an issue. And hi to Marvin in the chat. If you're doing broadcast, you need a way to get your signal to the television station. Now, if you're recording, you need a way to record the signal and then get the signal to the television station on tape or on a hard drive or some sort of means. But that is the live streaming broadcast step. Next is campuses. Now, for a video venue campus, you need, as a bare minimum, everything above. Then at the campus you need presentation software and you need a projector. Ideally, you would have two computers with presentation software and a switcher to switch between those two so that you can always have a backup running, especially for video recordings of the sermon. For that reason, I would and you need to take all your IMAG equipment or all your streaming broadcast equipment and record that. So however you do that, it could be that you haven't been recording up to this point. Well, you need to record and then afterwards have someone to edit that down. And we'll talk about personnel in a second. For live campuses, you have a whole nother level of complication. So you need great internet. I've talked to a guy that has, at one campus, decent internet, and at the two other campuses, iffy internet. That's not going to work. He should do pre-recorded in that case. And a great internet or a dedicated data connection, which is going to be very expensive. And additional encoding, decoding hardware and software. Kulobyte springs to mind as a provider of this. Next, for campuses in a bi-directional sense, and this is where we're at my church just planning on going in there, where the pastor can talk to the remote campuses live and have the remote campus talk back. You need everything that you have above in the list that I've already talked about on both ends. And if you have multiple campuses, on multiple ends. So you're going to need cameras in both locations, you're going to need switchers in both locations, you're going to need great tripods, people to man all that, you're going to need the encoding hardware on both ends. So it gets really complicated. Now, what I haven't mentioned is people, and this might be a problem that your church has. Maybe you're in an affluent area where money is less of an issue, but people is more of an issue because people in your area would prefer to give money than to give their time. If that's the case, you need to lead hard into those people to give their time as well. So, for stage 1, sermon and lyric support, you need someone who understands the software and understands music timing. It would be also great if they also understood English grammar, unless you're in a different language than the grammar of that language as well. But you can outsource the grammar aspect of it to someone else, have them check over everything, or have them put in the pastor's notes, etc. For stage 2, the pre-produced video, you need someone who can shoot, light, and edit. So that's someone who's like a triple threat at a bare minimum. Now you can have multiple people. So it could be that you've got someone who's a great shooter but they can't edit, someone who's a great editor but they can't shoot, someone who lights really well but they don't shoot so much or don't edit. That's fine. You could have a team of 3 people that accomplish this, or one person, or some combination. For stage 3 IMAG, in addition to needing a camera person for each camera, you also need someone who functions as a director/technical director, someone who can call the shots and operate the switcher. Ideally, you would have someone who could call the shots and a different person who would operate the switcher. Doing that will allow the director to think and the technical director just to press buttons, and that would be pretty cool. Number 4, live broadcast or live streaming. You need someone to understand and monitor the stream and someone to monitor the chat. If you're going live to a television station, you absolutely need a producer to talk to the producer at the television station or the whoever's running things at the television station, you probably also need an engineer, because things are going to break, and as bad as it is when it breaks when you're doing live stream, it's worse when it breaks when you're on television. So make sure you've got someone for that. Number 5, for pre-recorded campuses, you need an editor who takes the pre-recorded message and cuts it for time. Now, or references to the wrong day as well. Those tend to be the two most important things. So we record our Saturday night service. I'm this person, so I edit it, and while we don't edit out tonight as much as we used to, quite often the thing that we need to edit for is duration. Our senior pastor is more long-winded than the other teaching pastors. So sometimes we find that we've got an extra 15 minutes that we just don't have at the satellite campus. When our services are 9:30 and 11:30 and the pastor talks for an hour 15, that makes it really hard to get in a half an hour of worship and transition the room and the parking lots and everything that needs to happen between services. So we have to cut him down a little bit. So that becomes difficult in that we don't have isolated videos from all the cameras. So make sure you've got a really good editor in that case. If you're doing live streaming to the campuses, then you're going to need producers on both ends in constant contact to make sure things sync up with one another. And finally, if you're doing live two-way video, you need everything that you have at the main campus at all venues. Personnel, the equipment, everything. So you need producers like crazy, you need directors, you need camera people, you need someone to operate the computers like crazy. And so if your pastor comes back from a conference and says, yes, we're going to do live two-way video, and you've only got one person on the video team, do what Todd Elliott at Willow Creek suggests and go to your pastor and don't say no. Say, here are the ways that we need to do that. We can either hire some people, we're going to need a lot of equipment, we're going to need a lot of this, and just tell them everything that's involved and let them make the decision if we need to do that. Because doing it with one person is actually impossible. Since there are laws of physics that prevent one person from being in two places at the exact same time, it would be impossible with one person. So there are ways around that. You can hire people. People that are not interested will show up for money. But do you want to do that? I don't know that you do. So I hope that you see all the different ways that you can use video in your service. Basically, you can use it for sermon support, lyric support. You can make your own pre-produced clips. You can do IMAG with it, image magnification, where you show what's going on live in real time on the screens to help people in bad seats or people with poor vision. Or you can do broadcast/live streaming. Everything else is like a subset of those things, and when you go into broadcast live streaming, it becomes remarkably more difficult than it was when you were just doing lyrics and sermon support. Wish it wasn't that way, but that's the way it is. And when you're doing all this, you can really, really affect a lot of people. And because video is the language of our culture, you'll see more and more video online as people do it for marketing purposes, etc. Video is the language of our culture, so use it. to spread the good news and go out and change eternity. Until next time, I'm Paul Allen Clifford with TrinityDigitalMedia.com.